Hi, everyone, and welcome to our last ACE meetup of the year. We have a very exciting presentation today. We have Craig Tylek from the Worldwide Professional Services team here to talk to us about all the exciting new updates with Citrix Endpoint Management. So, of course, as usual, make sure you can type in your questions at any point throughout the presentation. And then, of course, the recording will be available at the bottom of the registration page in about a week or so. So without further ado, take it away, Craig.
Thank you, and greetings to everyone participating in today's ACE meetup focused on Citrix Endpoint Management. I'd like to take a second first and just give a big shout out to Michelle and the team for making these sessions possible. It takes a tremendous amount of flexibility and effort, dedication to coordinate and prepare these sessions. Michelle's positive attitude and commitment is certainly genuine and is critical to engaging dialogue that connects with teams across customers, partners, service providers, wherever it may be, and certainly within Citrix. So again, just a huge thank you to Michelle and also everyone participating. All right, we're going to now go ahead and just jump into the topics that we're going to cover today. First, just a quick overview and highlight of some enhancements around the platform. Those are going to include multi-mode management functionality within a single instance of your endpoint management service, enabling you to adapt to the needs of multiple use cases, wherever that may be. And also discuss the future and evolution of our MDX technology for MAM, mobile application management, and how we're embracing the changes within the industry. Additionally, we'll cover a few noteworthy updates, which we can also go into detail as we discuss after this quick review and participate in the Q&A session. So after that, the second half of this is really going to be enabling success and that focus and sharing additional field lessons and leading practices that may be more recent, as well as covering some, basic concepts and approaches that have enabled success in the past. Following that, we'll cover a few expert tips, if you will, that again focused on enabling your success and adoption and your journey wherever that may be on the digital transformation. So start by saying I'm happy to see that again Citrix recognized as an industry leader in unified endpoint management. I'm happy to see this again in 2019, and if you'd like to learn more, certainly Gartner is available, but if you see at the bottom, there is a URL which can be visited, and it's on citrix.com and under Citrix Endpoint Management. So jumping into where we are and where we're headed, right? Citrix Workspace, as this builds out, you'll see is really the concept is to focus on a platform that helps you get work done your way. A single unified workspace through Citrix and hosted on Citrix Cloud, integrating with any of your solutions, and providing access to your applications, files, corporate resources, all from a single identity and adapting to the needs of your organization and priorities. So as we, kind of focus that on endpoint management and how that is being embraced alongside Citrix Workspace, it's ultimately focused on accessing from a single device. So the solutions on how to manage and secure these devices is certainly an important decision that's being made and adopting and adapting. So Citrix is heavily invested on, the idea of not only end user but also administrative unified experience when managing these platforms and devices and business needs. Right. So the goal is to help you understand some of these new integrations that have been developed with endpoint management service in Citrix Cloud alongside Citrix Workspace and that unified experience. So just a quick reminder that when we talk about endpoint management and devices, it's not just iOS and Android, which, not long ago was really the core focus and often a highlight of the topics. But what we're seeing is continued expansion across all types of devices and operating systems. As you can see, Chrome OS, these are all Mac OS and Windows, and everything you see here are being embraced heavily and expanding that embracement across industries today, and we're seeing that continue to develop. So, in order to embrace that on the Citrix side, I'd like to highlight a few enhancements with regards to Citrix Endpoint Management. So we'll start with what I mentioned earlier, which is multi-mode management functionality. Just to give some context here, previously the enrollment mode, whether that's MDM only, MAM only, or MDM plus MAM, known as enterprise mode, would be typically a global server setting in which all devices and use cases within that server and that instance would have to follow that procedure. So if you want to require MDM for some users, that affects all of those registering. So what we've adapted to is the ability to have multiple enrollment modes within a single instance or a single environment, and move that global level server property to a model that focuses on delivery group or enrollment profiles, which ultimately helps you, embrace the migration to Android Enterprise, to Citrix Workspace, and also meet the needs of BYO or corporate device management within a single environment. So that's an exciting update. It's important to note some of these are tech preview and further communications are going to be announced, but another exciting feature to enable you in the rollout and adoption of use cases within a single environment. So just a quick overview of how that looks. Again, within a single environment, you'll see on the right all of these needs, whether it's BYO, corporate owned, these user devices, user choice, and as well as integration with Citrix Workspace and other platforms such as Intune. Microsoft Intune is also being adopted quite a bit, and excited to have such a tight partnership there and enhance our products as that grows. So evolution of MDX. As devices themselves continue to enhance the encryption approach and the security of the devices themselves, we're aware of these developments and embracing it by shifting our focus to really SDK enhancements, reducing dependency on the packaging software previously used and currently used. We've come a long way from, if you're a legacy customer or have history with the product. Used to be requirements on the actual Mac device on OS X to install the tools to package your applications that require management with MDX. So we migrated that to MDX as a service where we can offload that dependency. Now we're again focused on the needs of the use cases and the environments by developing and continuing to develop the SDK and how we can interact with with the application. So be on the lookout for that and additional communications, blogs, announcements, documentation as well will be continued to update. So just a few additional noteworthy updates. Android Enterprise, be ready to embrace adoption of this. It's also continuing to develop in the ability to streamline the onboarding and activation of fully managed devices, really leveraging work profiles, as well as some of the Samsung Knox and previous options available. So there's a few demos I'd like to highlight provided by some of our panelists actually, and you can see these on YouTube and see that live in action. On the iOS side, iOS 13 user enrollments with managed Apple IDs are being embraced. A big one is also Citrix Endpoint Management Service on Azure Government. So high security environments and U.S. public sector requirements, it's great to see that being enhanced as well as simplifying your options and path forward to adopt Citrix Workspace and Endpoint Management Service with Citrix Cloud. Something that truly is a choice of whether it's a net new build or in-place migration of the existing on-premise environment you may have, and the pros and cons, and what that may look like. So some of the considerations for an on-premise to Citrix Cloud endpoint management service would be really around assessing the environment details and use cases, qualifying, understanding prereqs, and ultimately leveraging our teams to connect, then validate or test drive and switch over. So there are several solutions available and worth considering. We can talk about some of these advantages and challenges, regarding migrating versus net new build and perhaps design updates. So focusing on enabling success, I'd like to highlight that we are embracing our cross-functional alignment in order to really focus on in allowing end users as well as administrators, customers, partners, again, service providers, whatever it may be, help plan, implement, monitor, and optimize with all of our available teams working together. And you can see these here. If you'd like to learn more, you can visit citrix.com or ask questions here. With that, again, all of these resources available to assist you in your journey. I'd like to provide a few field lessons and leading practices. There's some content here, but just a couple things to highlight is really how what does success actually mean for your organization and the environment that's supporting these use cases. And the best way to do that is to understand the end user experience and security requirements, as well as what the current workflow is and what value can be added by enhancing these. How is productivity measured? It could be on experience, could be quality, could be quantitative in outcomes. And again, that's something that I encourage people to know their current security posture, but typically start with end user experience design and adapt from there. We have tons of available resources. Again, we spoke about migration path and design updates. Docs.citrix.com, TechZone, Security Center, all these resources which we will provide, if you're not aware of them, are available. A few quick technical tips. Don't neglect your Citrix ADC, Citrix Gateway, or Gateway Service. Be up to speed on leading practices there as well. Versioning, builds, failover testing, backups, monitoring, leading practices on security, and all the CIPR requirements, especially regarding certificates and, essentially the posture of your environment. So another quick one that's often found is all users, right? So when creating a delivery group and adding resources such as apps and policies in the Citrix Endpoint Management Console, by default, people tend to use the all users. If you use all users, anybody on that domain who has an account has the ability to enroll and will be assigned those resources. So to add a layer of protection, you can disable that and create your own delivery groups. That way it's not all users. In the beginning, you can add your test group or your administrative functionality testing group and lock down from there and add on additional users as it makes sense for use cases. Again, don't neglect maintaining alignment with leading practices for things such as timeouts, how that impacts security and experience, tuning away from just default configurations, leverage actions, reporting, and additional opportunities to really simplify the management and reduce manual tasks. There's plenty of onboarding resources in Citrix.com and in other locations, but I can't emphasize enough the value of focusing on educating users what to expect, so that when feedback is provided, it's within the context of how they're using it, what applications they're using, what is required by the business versus what can be enhanced in user experience side by tuning configurations. So check out Citrix.com, resources for CM onboarding, Customer Success Center, docs.citrix.com, blogs, all of that. One more thing is certificate expiration. Be sure to not neglect that, especially if you're using certificate-based auth. That goes for public and internal. Don't wait for it to expire and then have to address that afterwards. The same goes for those transport protocols on ADC or gateway appliances, as well as ensuring that LDAP communications are secure, not using just straight LDAP, but LDAP-S, and accurate session and traffic policies, not adding or restricting to really only what needs to come in, not having a overall rule that allows anyone or any type of traffic if it doesn't meet or match the criteria. Make sure that on the ADC side is configured as needed to protect. So go to the last topic here on expert tips. Again, a big one, know your landscape. right? Very often, an environment is either inherited or perhaps the initial design document has not been maintained regularly, and the information, including details such as IPs or ports or any of the core infrastructures is outdated, and when updating or troubleshooting that can make a major difference rather than reverse engineering. So get acquainted with the supporting core infrastructure for the product being managed. Keep a pulse on initiatives outside of that may actually impact the environment or end users. Perhaps there's hardware or network upgrades or changes going on. Be prepared. Know your unknowns. If you're not sure, or there's areas of the environment that are not well documented or vague, just be prepared for that as well. And reach out and try and obtain a strategy to approach that and correct and gain information and insight. Invest in your team and master your solutions. Be proactive in education. It's easy to rest on things kind of just working as is, but embracing the latest enhancements and updates, such as some of these discussed, are critical to the success of your solution, and also proactive in preventing any kind of impacts that you could avoid, right? So another consideration is developing a cadence. Perhaps every 6 months to a year, engage professional services and either an assessment or design review and update. Stay up to date on our articles and documentation. If you are using our documentation and perhaps there's detail that is not deep enough, it's very important that that's communicated. So please provide feedback. I can't emphasize this enough either, that if it's not there or additional info is required, hit that feedback button. People listen. And same way that our solutions are embraced, we embrace the communications coming from the field. So a few out of the box tips. Don't be afraid to embrace creative solutions. There are some edge cases or challenges with either product or integration. It doesn't necessarily mean that the goal can't be achieved. There's solutions where REST API that's available for CEM, can help with automating simple tasks or solutions to custom needs. The last I'll say are a few tips, which you see here, on change control, staging, pre-production, and focusing on the correct access, right? Role-based access control, as well as effective feedback strategies. Make sure that the information you're getting from what you're deploying is effective in educating end users and giving you the ability to really challenge status quo. So the main point here is engage us. Wherever you may be in your workspace transformation journey, tell us, what are your challenges? What are your wins? What's important to you right now and the future of your organization? And that said, here to listen and embrace and address any questions is an all-star cast of people that hopefully some of you have worked with, and also myself. I'm proud to have worked with all these folks here who are dedicated to the success and enablement of your journey and where you're going. So with that said, I'll hand it off to Michelle and the team.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Craig. Yeah, like you said, there's a lot of information covered, and this is the last ACE meetup of 2019, so essentially your last chance to get this free range of knowledge and these experts. So we've stacked the panel today, and let's see if you can stump any of them. So joining Craig on the phone to help field any questions that come in, we have Gerard Lavin, Jonathan Campos, Frank Serp, Victor Canales, and Haroon Liban. So feel free, like I said, go ahead, start typing in those questions at any point. We'll see if we can stump them. And in the meantime, I know a lot of questions typically come up. Is this going to be recorded? Is this going to be available afterwards? And yes, all of the previous recordings for any ACE meetup are always available at the bottom of the registration page. That's bit.ly/ACE Citrix. So let's go ahead and dive on into the questions. All right, let's go ahead and dive into questions. So first one, we will send over to Jeroen. So our organization is looking into extending and rethinking our mobile strategy and wants to include devices that run on Mac OS and Windows 10. Does Citrix's UEM solution support these platforms? Jeroen?
Yes, thank you for sending me out a question. And of course, Citrix Endpoint Management provides these capabilities. Citrix Endpoint Management is an in-bread and depth UEM solution that supports Mac OS and Windows 10 through modern management. But we also support other platforms like Chrome OS. So maybe that's also a good thing to consider in regards to your strategy.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeroen. So next up, we'll send to Victor. What are the benefits for Citrix Endpoint Management on cloud compared to the on-prem versions?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much for the question. So I can think on three main advantages. Just to start, infrastructure maintenance tasks for admins that are very time-consuming and who worked about this on the last years should know. On-premise are transparent for them on the cloud. So basically, they will be able to focus on what is really important. So this is the users, the devices, and the apps. Second point is that cloud versions will have all the latest features, while on-premise versions won't have everything. The third one is that you will not need a DR environment, so for high availability, since Citrix Cloud will manage everything. So you don't have to worry about mobility availability.
Great. So next up for Gerard. My company is finally considering a bring your own device for employees, but they have security and privacy concerns. Can CEM help allay their fears?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the interesting things about Citrix Endpoint Management as a product is we've always been concerned about user privacy, user security, but not at the cost of user experience. And I think one of the key tenets of we have at Citrix is that we should give our users choice. So we have different ways of delivering that BYO experience on different platforms and based on the needs that suit the organization. So for a long time, we've had our own containerization technology called MDX that irrespective of the device state can control and containerize that data. So we're keeping the company's intellectual property private and safe from the individual, but also the individual's own information, social media apps, photos of their kids' parties, pictures of their dogs, etc., separate from their work stuff. But we've also been closely watching the evolution of the mobility platforms of iOS, and especially Android with Android Enterprise. And now we can offer BYO based on platform MAM, so separation provided by the platform. So ultimately, we can address those needs of keeping the data your private data as a user separate from your company data, protect the company, and provide choices in how that organization provides that BYO experience that suits that organization's needs.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So next up, for Jonathan. So I'm a current Zen Mobile on-prem customer. Is it possible to migrate seamlessly to the Citrix Endpoint Management Service in the cloud without impacting, or with the least amount of impact to my users, and still make use of all the latest features that Citrix has to offer?
Absolutely, and thank you for the question. And the answer is simply yes. There is a engineering approach towards a migration to the cloud by simply requesting a support case where we will go ahead and migrate your database to the cloud without re-enrollment and without user impact. The majority of the effort is actually done by Citrix, where Citrix will simply obtain an exported secured copy of your database, leverage that secured copy, migrate it to the cloud. You'll have the ability as a CM administrator to test that implementation, and then we simply flip a switch and migrate your environment from on-prem to the cloud, and it is that simple.
Wow, that's awesome. And the customers won't even notice a difference?
That's right. That's right.
Wow, all right. Well, next up, we'll move back to Jeroen. So we have a line of business applications for iOS and Android that are developed in-house and maintained, but they need a secure access to an internal backend resource. Can CEM help us to address this requirement?
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for the question, and I think Gerard stole my thunder a little bit on answering this question in his answer. But yes, Citrix Endpoint Management can help you in several ways with that. And as Gerard already mentioned, we also have a multi-MAM strategy, which includes Android Enterprise, and in the future will also include iOS user enrollment. And with these platform capabilities, PerApp VPN is a solution to securely connect to your internal backend resources in a corporate-owned scenario, but also in a bring-your-own scenario. This, in combination with our Citrix Single Sign-On app and our Citrix Gateway, provides that feature, that functionality to securely connect every line of business application, and in case of using platform MAM, even every public application to the backend resources. And additionally, we of course have our own Citrix technology, which is called MDX, or Citrix MEM, which has a micro VPN and also connects with the Citrix Gateway that provides that extra layer of communication security for your line of business applications. So these are the two scenarios that we provide for our MDX technology. We provide an SDK, or we provide an online wrapping service.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And kind of sticking along the lines with iOS and everything, we have another question for Victor. So how is Citrix aligned with Apple and Google new requirements?
So thank you so much for this question. It's very important just to be aligned with Apple and Google, since they are the key factor on the mobility challenges, right? So I'm glad to hear this question. We are perfectly aligned with Apple and Google latest changes, who are both continuously adding more features to improve user experience and security improvements. So we need to be able to adapt this very quickly. And some examples are how endpoint management is now integrated with Android Enterprise for Google, as Google has been deprecating some APIs in the last months with the new versions and so on, and adding new encryption capabilities on their own OS. So another, for Apple, for example, in early 2020, we will be adding Apple user enrollments as well, integrated with the new Apple Business Manager. So of course, we are perfectly aligned with them and following on the mobility challenge.
Awesome. So going over to Craig, I'm involved on a company merge. So how would CEM help with my mobility users?
So that's actually a really great question, and not often seen, but I have experienced it myself as well. You know, perhaps an industry that acquires companies frequently, or maybe just one or two merging of units within the business. What's important is to understand the requirements of those existing users being brought in, and how that aligns with the posture of which they're being merged with. So it's important to find that common denominator at the bottom of you know, that comparison with regards to security. But if you focus on user experience, and especially with these enhancements around multi-mode or enrollment, CEM really enables you to have those workflows be a little bit more independent based on the grouping of the users and assigning that to the delivery groups. So when it comes down to whether a device is going to be BYO, corporate managed, user choice, perhaps even integrated with another solution, you know, this really helps tailor to those needs, as well as perhaps how the security posture may differ. And just a note, something to consider is also the authentication flow and mechanism requirements for each of those use cases as companies merge solutions. So the flexibility is really the key with CEM, and also with the Citrix Cloud hosted service there. You know, it's much easier to maintain a single point for user administration. Administrative control, and also with the ability to have role-based access. So it's certainly one of those it depends questions, but a very great question, and something that product has really embraced. So hopefully that helps.
Awesome. Sounds good to me. So next up, Frank, how does Citrix help to secure my corporate data on mobile devices? So we recently had an incident a couple months ago where a mobile phone was stolen. So we just want to know about security.
Thank you for the question. So that is one of the things that's on the top of mind for many customers. When we're talking about securing the devices and the data, there's a couple of different options that organizations have. So Citrix Endpoint Management supports both MDM management as well as MAM management for mobile application management. So it really depends on your organization and what your organization is looking to accomplish when it comes to managing those devices and data. So on the MDM side, with the device under full corporate management, the device is lost or stolen, you have the ability to do a number of different things. You can lock the device, but you also have the ability to send out remote wipe commands, which removes all of the company data off the device while preserving any personal data. And there is also the option to do a full device wipe, which would go ahead and factory reset that device. Now, on the mobile application management, you know, there's still some capabilities that are available if you're utilizing Citrix's secure suite of applications, where we can go ahead and wipe the application data itself and leave the device completely untouched. Now, there is also what we call a kill pill on the mobile application management side, that if the device is offline for a specific period of time, then what would happen is the encryption key that is stored on the device would go ahead and automatically expire, which would then render any corporate data on the device as invalid. And in that case, even if the device didn't communicate back to the server for one reason or not, because Wi-Fi was turned off or cellular data might have been turned off, that corporate data would still be restricted, encrypted, and there would be no way to unencrypt that because the encryption key would have expired.
All right, thank you.
Hope that answers your question.
Well, next up we have Jeroen. So how do you, just generic question, how do you stack up to the competition? Ooh.
Well, thanks, and another great question on this topic is, and we can basically discuss this for hours, going on into the nitty-gritty details, compare API levels, the amount of policies you have implemented, but basically it's all about fulfilling your use case and also extend your view beyond the UEM use case. Look at the dot at the horizon, how UEM can add value to your total workspace strategy. And if you really want to get a quick overview on how Citrix Endpoint Management stacked up to the competition, please have a look at the analyst reports, and you'll see that Citrix Endpoint Management is a leader in all the analyst reports like Forrester Wave, the IDC MarketScape, and the Gartner Magic Quadrant for UEM.
Awesome, thank you so much. So next up, we will go back to Victor. So my iOS users need to check in at work within our application without action from the user, for example, while driving. How would we be able to accommodate that?
Good question. Thank you so much. So in endpoint management, you are very flexible in terms of what you can balance. You can balance the security versus user experience to adapt your needs, basically. So in this specific situation, you could, for example, extend the online authentication to enhance user experience. So this means that users will need to enter the AD password or PIN once a week, once every month, as long as you wish. But this doesn't mean that you are not adding security, because you can add offline authentication in Activity Timer. So you can use, for example, the Touch ID or the Face ID for your iPhone for offline authentication. So in these situations, the user will need to authenticate, for example, with face recognition. So they don't have to type the PIN with your hands. So maybe this is worthy for you and it's valid while driving, right? So this is an example, but it's feasible, of course.
Awesome. So next up, going back to Gerard. So I use different products to manage my Mac, Windows, and Chromebook estate. What is the advantage of a UEM solution?
Yeah, I think this is a question that's fairly close to my heart. In my previous job before I joined Citrix, myself and my team managed the mobile devices for almost 200,000 users. So anything that can take away from the complexity of that for an IT administrator or for an IT operations or engineering team is always a bonus. There's definitely disadvantages from having to kind of configure the same thing in multiple places. You know, there's a risk of policy inconsistency because somebody probably in your security and risk organization has created a set of risk policies for that organization based on the regulatory requirements that organization has to meet, you know, whether it's HIPAA or it's banking regulations. So if you have to kind of recreate those policies every time in different consoles, there's a risk that there's policy drift and difference. I think the other great thing about having a single view of all your devices is it's great for reporting. It's a great way to create those to get a view of devices users are using. the overall health of your fleet of devices as well. So I think from an admin perspective, definitely, advantages to that. I think from an end user perspective, though, and from the business perspective, there's also advantages as well. So having a modern UEM solution like Citrix Endpoint Management allows you to support, multiple platform types, Mac, Windows, Chromebook, iOS, Android, and other other mobile platforms. So even if it's something you're not offering today, like Chromebooks, it opens up the possibility of looking at those for specific needs. So we're seeing a lot of interest in Chromebooks in the kind of frictionless office scenario, where somebody can come in, just get a Chromebook from a rack, work from there, and continue on without having to have a device with them. So it opens up possibilities, but then it also allows you to deliver a consistent workspace experience to your end users. So when they move across devices, and we find most people work on 3 to 4 devices in a day, probably starting maybe with a BYO device at home and then moving on to a corporate asset. It gives them that consistent experience, and you can deliver that consistent experience down. That makes that individual user more productive, it gives them a better experience, makes them more engaged. So I think in summary, it's great for administrators, great for people delivering the service, provides that great experience for the end user, which in turn, results in gains for the organization itself.
Awesome. And just a heads up for everyone as well, we have a couple more questions left. So if you do have something, make sure that you submit it soon because we are nearing the end. So next up we have for Jeroen. So just security and compliance in general, it looks like, is there anything that you want to add? I know we already kind of covered some of the security aspects, so if there's anything extra that you want to add, just feel free, get in there.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And security and compliance is, of course, something that is top of mind in the last year, but will be top of mind further down the road for the couple of next years, and maybe even longer, especially around the regulations that companies, but also organizations need to comply to. So that is one of the aspects where security and compliance is important, but also the continuous modern threats that your current employees face around the corner. They are everywhere, internal or in the internal network, or even the external network. So unified endpoint management and mobile threat defense is, in that scenario, definitely a no-brainer. Unified endpoint management can help you with the modern platform man capabilities to sanction the applications and secure your company data. And mobile threat defense can help you with suspicious networks, man-in-the-middle attacks. But you also read in the news and in the media like that even applications from public stores are not always safe. So Citrix Endpoint Management integrates with those mobile threat defense vendors that are in the markets, like Zimperium, Checkpoint, Wandera, Symantec, and others. And in extension of that, the zero trust model is becoming very important, where you continuously assess the risk and compliance of a user, a device, which connection you use, which apps he has, and make sure that he has just enough access on a specific moment when all these conditions are met for corporate data and services. And Citrix provides you with tools like Citrix Analytics, our networking technology, our client access control, UEM solution to support any zero trust model that you choose. So I hope that answers your question.
That's perfect. And then last up, unless we have anything coming in last minute, but it seems like a good one to end on anyway. So to Jonathan, can I do a Citrix Endpoint Management trial, and would it be free?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So customers can easily reach out to their account managers. Their account managers would contact the appropriate teams to go ahead and enable and automatically provision those environments. And let me say, the one great value of the proof of concept process with Citrix Endpoint Management is that it allows you to just immediately attach your production licenses and continue that proof of concept as your production environment. So part of the process is to integrate it with your environment, your actual corporate environment, such as your Active Directory environment, potentially your Citrix Gateway environment, if that's a use case for you. And again, the great thing about it is once everything is set up, tested, you've seen your use case in action, all you have to do is just attach your licenses to it and continue using the product, and it's that simple. And that's a great question. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and thanks everyone. Again, we don't have any other questions, so I'll kind of keep an eye on it in case any last second trickle in. But I appreciate Craig so much for doing the main presentation, and then all of the panelists, thanks so much for joining to help field all these questions. And like I mentioned before, be sure to check out if you want to see a copy of or listen to a copy of the recording, it's going to be available at the bottom of the registration page. So that's bit.ly/ACE-Citrix, as well as the library of the other previous ACE, so you can always watch a recording. So thanks everyone so much. Appreciate your time, and see you in 2020. Everyone have a great holiday season.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers.